Unmuted microphones.
No whispering.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Wednesday, July 16th Cincinnati Public Schools Audit Committee. Thank you for everyone for being here, and thank you to those joining online. We'll go ahead and get started with just a very brief administrative item. You'll notice in terms of the packets that we have are a little bit skinnier than normal. I think we're going to begin transitioning to either printing and bringing your own or bringing a device to save on printing costs given budget constraints. It seems like it makes a lot of sense for us to kind of be on our own in terms of what you want to bring to the meeting. So please do next time consider your personal devices or whatever you need to be able to review materials. I will go ahead and kick off our discussion around our fiscal year 2026 audit committee goals. If you recall last meeting, we did begin this discussion. Last meeting fell in fiscal year 25. So as we wrap up that year and conclude that year, we did briefly talk a little bit about what might our goals be for 2026. If you recall, we felt last year we had a couple goals, one around being involved in the treasurer search. That is concluded. We had some goals around what I would call current events, such as the levy and various legislative updates that come and go and change, and they actually come and go and change between meetings sometimes for how frequently we meet. So we did discuss that, having a holdover goal around those, as well as our involvement directly with the board, helping share what the audit committee does, what the internal audit function does, and its impact on the district, and how we might be able to better share that impact and get that impact out there. So those were kind of the things that came out of that last meeting, with the intent of having those items on paper and thinking about those items, but then also spending a little bit of time at this meeting talking about what more or less we might want to do from a goal perspective. We would have some brainstorming now during this session, and then take that away, work towards writing those goals up, and then as you can see on the screen, finalizing those at our October 8th meeting. So I will open it up to the floor for anyone that would like to further discuss those items from last meeting or add to items that we want to talk about, knowing that we also do have a full agenda, so we want to be as succinct as we can in this discussion. Not everyone at once. I'll pick on board member Craig then, since he spoke up at last meeting.
I can speak, but I think the budget, there was some efforts put towards risk assessment with the changes in the budget. And I think coming into this next fiscal year that's something that should continue, because we are probably not seeing a whole lot of extra revenue coming in next year, probably even less. So again, that's going to be a really important, might even be more important for this next year than it was for this past year.
Before Jim spoke up, I was going to pick on board member Craig because we've spoken in other meetings around that third item I shared about the impact that the committee has and that the audit function has. If you care to share
Sure.
more.
I think, again, one of the things we've talked about, and it's been something for the last year or so, as we've revamped the role of both internal audit and then the role of this committee as a result, is to be able to demonstrate the value that comes out of the work that's being done by internal audit, but the work and the advice and the consult that is done through the internal audit committee. And so I think one of the things we were it definitely should be something on the agenda and definitely something to be considered for as we go through the next fiscal year is just being able to demonstrate in a more expansive manner, whether that is demonstrating in a bigger board setting, so at board meetings, or being able to kind of put together some type of official statement of value kind of deal for what the committee's done, what the internal audit team has done. There are a lot of ways that we've been able to gain value from as a district. And so I think it's just helpful to, as a little bit of what we've talked about in the past, it's been helpful to see that.
I do like that idea of sort of a statement of value, because oftentimes thinking back to the last 10 or so years when the audit committee and the internal audit function has grown drastically and has done a lot more work. I think we lose sight over time of the things that we did do, and having that stated somewhere, maybe in perpetuity, so people have the ability to go back and look at it and remember those things, I think provides value.
I don't think it's just the statement of it. It's actually showing after the fact. Because, I mean, anyone who's done auditing, it's not always perceived to be the most worthwhile event at a lot of organizations. But when you experience the fruits of that, where you save money or you stop problems, that's when organizations recognize the value. So being able to not just say this is what we want our goal to be, or how we want to show value, but measuring against that, I think, is critical. And being able, however that is, being able to help do that, because I've sat in her shoes, and not at a government entity, but I've sat there, and it's not fun when people look at you and see you as a cost all the time. So, and there is a lot of value that your department does provide.
Any other thoughts? I think the levy is still something that's out there, falls under that current event category. I feel like we do seem to always take up the events of the day, which we don't know what they will be. So I have always seen value in at least acknowledging that that's something that we will talk about and give guidance as needed.
I mean, just current event update. I was representing the district today at the Human Services Chamber, and gave an update about how the district is doing, and we got a 100% endorsement from the Human Services Chamber in support of renewal of the levy. And some of the talking points around the levy is, we're not asking for more money. This isn't going to increase anybody's taxes. And at the same time, we have a lot of great things happening in the school district. We've got a really good management team that's put forth restructuring growth plan, which is significant, because could have been done 10 years ago. And we finally got a superintendent who wants to take it on, and we're creating these middle schools that are going to have a big impact on student outcomes, both for those grade levels, because those are grade levels that aren't really high school and they're not really elementary school. So we'll focus on those kids a little bit more, and it will also make our high schools no longer be overcrowded. So a lot of good things happening. We've got part of this renewal is the preschool promise, which is really, it's split between Cincinnati Public Schools and the CCP, the Cincinnati Preschool Promise. And the kindergarten readiness of kids who come out of that program is palpably different. And so it's 15 million out of the 48 million. And so very exciting to be able to renew that and have that program continue, which is a fairly unique program in major cities in the United States. So that's the update on renewal for today. How's that?
Excellent.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. All right, so are there any other comments before we move on? So, well, if there are none, we'll draft these up and bring them to the October 8th meeting and present them for finalization. Eve?
If I could, Mr. Chair, one thing on the risk, and I don't know if this is pertinent, but the district, not only for the renewal this year, but obviously we'll be asking for money from the public next year as well. A much bigger ad that we really need the audit committee's help in helping formulate what that means. But also, at risk, we are currently involved with a lawsuit, a case suing the state of Ohio regarding universal vouchers, and have had some success initially in at least Franklin County, and hope for some more success. Today, it was decided that even though we were on the winning side of 3 of the 5 counts, the steering committee for that lawsuit decided also to appeal count 5, which we did not win. And that's based in part on discrimination, racially, and what have you. The other piece besides that case is that, as we now know too, we are becoming involved rather strongly in a case and a suit, and I don't know the proper legal terms. My friend Brandon might know the right terms regarding the federal government's withholding of funds. So there's risk both at the state level and the federal level, as you can well imagine. And this doesn't even talk or speak to our stand on DEI, which we all know about. So there are a number of risk elements that we have decided to engage in the name of fair funding for our students and our kids and our taxpayers. So it's going to be a big couple of years.
Great. Thank you for all of that. Let's go ahead and move down to the next item on the agenda, which was levy and financial discussion. So we got a little bit of levy already, but Jen, if I could turn it over to you.
So they stole my thunder. So we have a balanced budget. Yay, celebration.
Yes.
He did the lion's share of the work. But there are, and we did that with the help of Governor DeWine, who issued 67 vetoes, 68 vetoes. Some of which are being considered for reversal. The House is voting on July 21 on several of the issues that could be very financially painful to us. So we're monitoring that closely. And if they pass 3/5 vote, right, they have to go into the Senate for the same thing. So we're waiting to see the results of whether the vetoes will be overturned. There's still ballot language out there that addresses property tax reform that could wipe out $393 million worth of our revenue if they don't replace it with something else. They just want to like eliminate property taxes. Well, that's 393 million of our $600 million of revenue. And so we're trying to talk to the legislators about what could the alternatives be? How can we come closer together on our opinions? And so we're trying to set up some meetings with Bill Seitz, who is now over the property tax reform. He's been a longtime supporter of the district, a parent, a board member in the district. And so we're still fighting those battles. Mr. Crossett's right. Next year's revenue, if at all, will be flat. Our union leadership very graciously bypassed any kind of cost of living increase this year to help us balance the budget, but we won't be able to get through that a second year of no cost of living increases. So we're gonna have to find a way to make room in the budget for that, as well as already negotiated step increases in the salary scales. So we're always faced with more cuts because our revenues stay flat, but our expenses always go up. So it'll be a challenge for Mr. Gusson as your next treasurer. We do have a levy on the ballot this November, and as Mr. Crossett said, it's the $15 million set aside for the support preschool. And we have some long-term financial strategies on new money for next year, what that might look like. We were talking about trying possibly for an income tax, school district income tax levy, and a PI levy to help with the facility and master plan. You know, we had this $1 billion plan, and now those buildings are 20 years old. They need new roofs and new HVA systems. And so that's a lot of money. So we've estimated like a 4 mil PI levy, possibly permanent improvement levy for that. So when and how we do all that and structure those, depending on whether some of the vetoes are eliminating some of our property tax types. So we have half of our property taxes basically are in fixed rate levies. The other half are in fixed sum levies. And so a fixed sum levy, the millage changes to raise the revenues. They're talking, one of the ballot languages is eliminating fixed sum levies. So I don't know, we don't know whether they're going to convert it over to a fixed rate levy as an automatic, or do we have to go back to the public and ask for it to be renewed? So there's a lot of fear out there. So we don't really know how to structure the next levy and how to start marketing it and selling it early, because we don't know what our options are going to be. But we are trying to do that. I think in the past, if I'm not mistaken, some of the older audit committee members or seasons, let's put it that way. I don't know if you officially did an endorsement on the levy. Do you remember? You did. Okay. So we would formally ask for that endorsement. And so we're starting to collect endorsements as we go forward. And then, with our levy planning, there's a team that's already starting. We filed with the Hamilton County Board of Elections. We're waiting on an issue number. It should come sometime in August or maybe even early September. So then we can really start doing our campaign. I think, the grants. So the grants were suspended on June 30. We received an email to say they're withholding funds. Our budget year starts on July 1, so it was very unfortunate timing. There's, I can't remember how many of the grants, 4 or 5. It's $5.2 million in total that's being suspended. And so we've had to delay contracts and planned services, and we're trying to figure out how to maybe switch some from one grant to another.
This is federal.
Federal money, yes. I'm sorry if I didn't say that. And so we're still working through those issues. In the meantime, the state ODW upgraded their website, and it's very, very difficult to use. And so we're trying to figure out how to properly file those things as well. Did I miss anything? No? Okay. Any questions? Are there any new audit members that I haven't met yet? Because I've moved out of state, so I don't always join in person. I'm Jennifer. I'm the exiting treasurer, retiring, so.
Jen, maybe you want to say what those services would be that are specific to those grants.
I'll let Mike to answer that question, because we're working on a report for the board, but.
Sure. So really there's like a couple big ones. There's Title II, Title III, and Title IV are the big grants. And then there's some adult education stuff, which is perplexing to me, but one of them is adult education. But for the other ones, Title II is what's called improving teacher quality. So it really helps us do like professional development for teachers, helps us basically recruit, retain, and skill up our teachers. We use it for a lot of professional development, a lot of curriculum development, stuff like that, to make our teachers more effective and to allow us to keep and retain good teachers. Title III is for students with limited English language proficiency. So this helps all English language learners. So again, it's a lot of services that we put in place to bridge language gaps and help those students get acclimated into our schools and provide textbooks, provide professional development for teachers, to kind of learn to work with that population. And then Title IV is a little bit of everything. So it's a lot of supplemental stuff. Things you'll know a lot of the stuff we use it for, like the Yonder pouches. That was the use of it. So it helps with school safety, security, social emotional learning. It does a lot of our behavioral intervention supports are funded out of that. There's also some technology stuff. So really like a whole grab bag of things that are really awesome for our students and are really tough to live without. So we are, as Jen said, we are working through contingency plans of how we're going to function until this gets resolved.
So when you say resolved, is there some sort of likelihood of that resolution, or is it the contingency plan is more likely than not needed? Or
We have a couple contingency plans. One of the things that we're looking at right now is carryover, right? So there's, and folks have been in finance committee know every year there's some carryover from year to year from the grants. And so one of our plans is if all we had was carryover for this year, what would that look like? Right? That's a plan. You know, if we got a partial amount, if we didn't get everything, we also looked at, you know, can we switch things from Title III to Title I? What does that look like? So a lot of different kind of what ifs, because we really don't know at this point.
I think one of the things to stress on this is that, so one, these are funds that have already been appropriated that are just being held. And in theory, you can only hold them for so long a period of time under the law. It's 45 days, I think is what it says under federal law, that you could hold them under review. But that doesn't mean that current administration is going to follow the law. The second part to that, though, and I think this is where it's very difficult for districts like ours, but I think districts across the state of Ohio and everywhere else who's having this problem, is that you make plans to do work with an understanding that you'll be repaid by these grants, right? So it's not that you get paid first and do the work, you actually do the work and then get paid. And so in theory, if you delay doing the work, it makes it more difficult for you to then utilize those resources at a later date. So while we might be able to do some of this stuff and might have certainly contingency plans to tide us over until we are authorized under state law to get the funds from the state that are filtered from the federal government down, other districts the plan for this is really to keep people from using the funds, right? So the goal is that a district can't do X, Y, and Z, and if they can't start doing it, then they won't do it, and then therefore they won't need the funds anymore, and we can claw it back. So it's more of a delay than necessarily as effective a means of getting rid of. But that does mean some of the programs, some of the things, especially like some of the after school care and other stuff that was funded out of these things. You can't do it. You don't hire folks. You're not going to have them later to go back to hire. And so I think this is something that we're in the process of dealing with, but also be very cognizant of how much this could have changed how certain things are operated.
any other questions for Jen or Mike or the board members?
On the property tax issue, can you just clarify, is that eliminating any school funding from property taxes in the state? And does that mean that then all districts will have to add an income tax in order to fund their schools?
There is a ballot initiative that proposes to eliminate all property taxes. And that's it, just eliminate. So it's not just
for
school
all
districts. Yes, not just school districts. So cities, counties, zoos, everybody will be hurting. There's other languages that are attacking specific types of levies. So there's a lot of effort out there to relieve property taxes. So it's very complicated, and Mike has a tracker where he has all the different bills there that are listed. There's probably 10 or 12 or even more.
Yeah, so in addition to the ballot initiative, which would eliminate property taxes statewide, which is a wild idea. But
Ballot initiative as in like 50% of the voters have to vote
Yes.
for it to pass.
Yes.
Okay.
and I don't know that they've gotten the signatures yet to put that on the ballot. That's definitely discussed. A more likely, I think, scenario is there's a bill in the House right now, House Bill 335, and it takes all of the kind of icky stuff from the Senate budget and puts it into one House bill that they're debating, and that has a higher chance of some of it getting through, but that is, eliminating inside millage, which would cost us 36 to 40 million a year. That is the 20 mil floor stuff, which could be up to $11 million a year. You know, reducing the types of levies we can put on the ballot, and a bunch of other stuff.
Was it deemed unconstitutional for the way that schools are funded with property tax? Was that something that was?
Yeah, that's a DeRolf case. Cases, actually, there were multiple DeRolf cases that said that Ohio's system of funding property tax is unconstitutional. It's kind of how we got to the current fair school funding plan. Was the legislature's response to that, to try to make it constitutional. Now, what's interesting is, and especially in some of these budget proposals, the percentage of state share that's proposed is actually less than what it was when the unconstitutional lawsuit was filed.
Well, it was unconstitutional because there was an over-reliance on property wealth. And so they used to do a formula where they tried to do an adjustment of cost of doing business, and that didn't really work. So the fair funding formula, but we became wealthier for no apparent reason. And our district share went from, our state share went from 36.9 to 33. And so they're forcing us back to the property taxes. But they say they don't want to have property taxes, so we're in a conundrum. And we've never been, historically have never faced this issue before. So we're really forging new territory, and what our future looks like.
So I understand the official announcement of the federal grant suspension is relatively new. And I also understand that you are looking through contingency plans for some of the programs. But has there been any communication or information provided to the school families to understand what potentially may happen as a result of that suspension?
I doubt there's been any communication other than public board meetings. Any formal communication, because we just received this information and we didn't have a balanced budget yet, so we didn't know exactly how it was going to proceed. But you do raise a valid point that we probably need to start putting something together quickly. We just don't know what to tell them at this point.
Just to ground us. So I understand that the federal cuts that we're talking about is highly relevant right now for the school year that starts in a month. What you're talking about for property taxes in the state of Ohio, is that really impacting your budget for the following fiscal or school year, like basically next year, if that is enacted with legislation this fall?
Some parts of the language might, not this year, we're good for this year in terms of the general fund, but next year, like the 20 mil floor change, we didn't even talk about that will hit us in 27, right? So because property taxes are a year in arrears and we're on a fiscal year, they're on a calendar year, it'll only affect us half of a year in the fiscal year 27 school year. If they remove the 20 mil floor calculation. This is like a college level class. So the 20 mil floor is a rule that says every district needs to have at least 20 mills to operate. And so House Bill 920 was a House reduction factor, so that prevents property taxes on fixed rate levies to grow with inflation. So what they do is they recalculate the millage of the tax rate on everybody's bills to collect about what the voters had approved. So as property values goes up, the millage rate goes down. So we collect about the same amount each year, but we get the advantages, we get new construction as each year's additional revenue. So as that millage rate drops, and some of our levies were passed back in the early 70s, late 60s, and so the millage numbers are really low. And so we drop below that floor on our residential property. And so the Hamilton County auditor automatically raises the tax bills to get us back up to that 20 mil floor. So that's extra revenue for us. There's some effort out there to change that calculation. The fixed sum levies the millage and the fixed sum levies aren't part of that calculation right now. So there's some effort to move the fixed some levies into that calculation. So we would, with any new levy money that we would have to calculate the millage of what we need and then add on to it the loss of the floor. Does that make sense? So it's, like I said, it's like a college level cloud, it's long, it's very complicated. But there's a lot of language out there that's gonna hurt us. We're trying to figure out what's gonna hit us first. To answer your question.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to, one, that's a great explanation that I think I followed, but two, it's helpful to know from a timing perspective, kind of what we're talking about and how far out in the future this is, or lack thereof.
Right.
Yeah, just as an additional thought onto what Jen mentioned there, I think this is in part why the different strategies that are being used to attack funding of how schools are funded need us to be very vocal and support in a lot of ways, because again, whether it's the overturning the vetoes, whether it's the other pieces of legislation that are out there sitting to get support, whether it's the initiative, right, which would not just kill schools, but public libraries, mental health facilities that utilize, and disability children facilities that utilize real estate taxes, state or city, local municipalities that use real estate taxes for things. It all in total is efforts to take away how we fund public education that does not affect how private schools, how charter schools are supported and funded. And I think that's another aspect of what has been kind of the constant message that we've been trying to principle out as board members, but also as a district, to recognize that a student who goes and gets a charter, I think they're trying to call them scholarships, but essentially voucher, the charge amount that they get does not change based on how much the school put up in levies, how much the property taxes changes in this. It's the set amount. Ours is what's decided on all these other factors. Hence why, like, when they found the legislation, or when they found the funding mechanism unconstitutional, is because of its over reliance. There is no effort to find the over reliance on anything other than how much dollars we want to give a student to go to private school. Add into that, again, a lot of the things that are going on at the federal level and some other efforts to defund how we do schools. It is just really important that we have collective support and a really big positive message about the great things that are happening in the district, to echo why it is so important to keep funding public school education. Because I think that's the other part that we will rely upon you all to also help us with, is that messaging around the great work, the great things, the great programs, the great opportunities in CPS that don't often get mentioned in other spaces and among other crowds. Because that's the other thing that they've done, is they've made public schools look a certain way so that then people feel negative about public school education. So you're now more okay with, oh, they don't need this money anymore. And so that's kind of the counter message we're going to have to do in some ways as we think about future levies as well.
I'm not sure how you communicate all of this effectively to the normal person, but it sounds like to me you need like a schoolhouse rock type of communication that goes out, because it's so complicated that I don't know how you can be effective at getting the message out so that people can clearly understand the complexities and which you have to deal with. But you have to find a better way of communicating, because this information will go over the majority of our heads.
I think you're absolutely right, especially if we try to communicate the financial aspect of it. What's going to be communicated is the political aspect of it. It's very obvious that this is a political effort. It's not an economic effort. It has nothing really to do with finances or money. It's the funding of public education. It is the dismemberment, if you will, of the public sector and public unions. And the greatest number of all of that, both in dollars and in union membership, is in public schools. Because at the very same time they're doing this to us, they're giving a $1.1 billion to vouchers to go to private schools, which are not being used by people that are economically disadvantaged. So that's over. So they're building that system like you have in the South, where when they had to integrate, they found a system of private school system. And that's what they created. That's what's being created in this red state now, is what they did 30 years ago or 35 years ago in the South. So you're right. We'll never be able to communicate this financial, because even when we do, it sounds like, oh, we can't wait to tax you. You know, they've already claimed the vocabulary. So we can't look like that. This is really about defunding public schools. It's about 5 basic principles of democracy. It is really about local control. And that's why we're going to be in federal court and why we're already in state court. And I think I just really want to second what you're saying. The financial piece, this crowd can understand stuff, but when you go out and you're on the, on the campaign trail, you're not going to be able to communicate this unless it sounds like you want to tax and spend. So it's the political and sociological, and it's all about DEI too. They really don't want public schools.
Just a couple other talking points that might be helpful to all of you is, one is, there's a lot of visibility on real estate taxes by property tax owners. They said property taxes are really high, but indirectly, everyone who lives in the district pays property tax indirectly through their rent. So there's been some talk about, property tax isn't equitable. It actually is it's as equitable as an income tax. Everyone's paying that, either directly or indirectly. So there's a thought around that. The other thought is, I lost my other thought. I can't even think of what it was, but it'll come back. So what you were talking about, the political.
It's what the other business sections, if you need more time later.
It's already built in.
I think as financial people, business people, you got to understand return on investment. The return on investment in the money that's going into privatization in schools is not changing student outcomes. The voucher money is going to families that already are on a trajectory for positive student outcomes, and the charter schools privatization, the private charter schools have been around for 20 years and they haven't moved the needle. They've done nothing transformative to make educational outcomes better. So you've got a lot of taxpayer money going for education that doesn't make any difference in a student population getting better educated. So that's another maybe talking point that's fairly high level that you can talk to people about.
Well, this is all a great discussion. I appreciate all the perspectives from the board members and those from the administration. I think we'll continue to support as an audit committee the needs of the district, and the more you share with us and the more you ask for help, the more we'll be here to help. So I look forward to helping fight the battle with you all. If I could turn it over to Lauren and Isaac to go into our fiscal year 26 internal audit plan.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming to, I think, the last CPS Board and Audit Committee meeting of the month of July. So after this, hopefully everyone can have some rest and get back together for August. But with that being said, looking ahead into fiscal year 2026, we have some great progress to share with you and some plans that we look forward to seeking your feedback on. So jumping into our presentation side, Rob's pulling it up right now. Just a second. Great. So since we last met at the end of April, we had the unique opportunity to go to the Association of Local Government Auditors, ALGA, a big group of people kind of like us, which is really fun. We get to exchange ideas and hear presentations. And essentially this conference is all peer-led, so anyone can volunteer and give a presentation. So Isaac and I put together a presentation about all the work that has been done by our team around follow-up procedures, as well as our dashboard. And we presented to, I've got my numbers here, about 150 people in person, as well as 300 online. And then our video video, which is on the following slide, was available on demand thereafter. But I think it was a fantastic professional development opportunity. Typically, when you sign up for these things, you're put into these breakout sessions that are small rooms. Because people signed up for our session, we were put into the main auditorium that had big screens and big lights and cameras. And you can, if you watch the video, give us, I think Isaac did great. Give me a little grace. I think my hand was shaking so bad when I tried to set down the clicker, but it was a good professional development opportunity. And honestly, it was really, really exciting to get some feedback from other audit groups that are 10 times our size or more, asking us questions, asking how we implemented this work. And I think we've had probably a dozen or so emails thereafter asking to get together with us and for us to share ideas. So it really was a wonderful validation of the project that we've done, and certainly the work led by Isaac and of course Emma, who's I should mention welcomed her little girl on May 10th. So we are very excited for Emma and her husband. So we just wanted to celebrate this presentation. And like I said, if you all are interested, the recording is on the next slide and shared in the Google Drive. It's about 45-ish minutes, but I think it's fun to hear some of the feedback. You'll hear all the Q&A side as well. And then just in terms of celebration, and Kevin, you reminded me or made me think of this as you're talking about celebrating the ROI, the value, and the impact of audit. So actually on the previous slide, Rob, if you don't mind, this year we put together, I guess maybe we have different slides up. Nonetheless, there's an impact report that's linked in our Google Drive, and Superintendent Murphy invited us to participate in this broader district effort where each department is putting together a report celebrating some of the KPIs, number of recommendations in our case, things of that nature. And then bits and pieces will be pulled together for a district-wide impact report, which will be a great way to showcase and tell the story. I'm looking at our Director of Communications, I think will be leading this charge, but a great document to share with our community to say the wonderful things happening here at CPS, and we're very grateful to be included. Fantastic. So I will, with that being said, turn it over to Isaac, who really led the charge in a transformative risk assessment approach this year.
Thank you, Lauren. Good afternoon, everyone. Before we get started, I want to mention that these slides are more of a kind of high-level summary of all the work that was done for this year's planning. And throughout the presentation, I will be referencing various pages in the audit plan, just so you can kind of connect the dots as to what I'm mentioning. So as you may recall, at this past April Audit Committee meeting, we reported on the completion of the department development project titled Organizational Risk Matrix. It was included in the summary of work document that was provided. But this project was used to create an enhanced and robust framework for our risk assessment process. So to accomplish this, we performed extensive research and created templates for a risk assessment and put together a comprehensive approach for this year's risk assessment. So this visual kind of highlights a few key differences and improvements when comparing our historical approach to this new approach that we used this year. So for this year's risk assessment process, we kind of followed a four-phased approach to the work. We finalized a new audit universe and then went through to ultimately developing the internal audit plan. Next slide. Thank you. So risk identification and inputs, this can be found on the top of page 7 in the internal audit plan document. This visual summarizes all of the kind of inputs that we leveraged throughout our risk assessment process. and ultimately to develop the internal audit plan. These were utilized in some capacity throughout all 4 phases of the work that I mentioned on the last slide. And so this kind of helped us assess all of the specific risks across the district and gain an understanding of the operational and control environments of each. So this slide actually relates to the second printout that we provided to you all today, titled the Fiscal Year 2026 Risk Assessment Audit Universe. So this first step in our new approach is establishing the new audit universe, which is a comprehensive and dynamic list of all potential areas that could be audited throughout the entire district. So shifting away from our historical approach of assessing risk by budget unit to now utilizing this audit universe is likely the most significant change that we made to this process. So this new audit universe is comprised of 84 functional areas throughout the district. And they are categorized or classified into these 8 groups. And the audit universe will regularly be updated and revised as changes occur throughout the district. I'm pretty sure a few things have even changed since the board has, finalized and approved next year's budget. These details can be found at the bottom of page 7 of the plan. So to assess risks and associated with all 84 functions of the audit universe, we utilize this twofold approach, which is actually commonly used in internal audit as well as enterprise risk management. And it essentially includes rating impact and likelihood for all functional units. The formula is pretty straightforward. Impact times likelihood equals overall risk rating. However, there's a lot that goes into each of those two assessments, impact and likelihood. And I'll kind of dive into each of those in the next slides. So moving down to page 8, I believe, on the audit plan. When assessing the impact of a potential failure, we considered 8 different types of risks for determining the overall impact score. We wanted to ensure that we were capturing a diverse range of ways that the district could be impacted, not just financially impacted, of course. And so the definition of each of those are outlined in the table on that page. And then we also included some examples of impact level scoring there as well. So moving on to page 9 for the likelihood assessment, we considered 9 operational and control environment factors to help us determine the probability of a failure occurring for a specific function or process. So the presence of multiple of these control environment risk factors increases the likelihood that a risk or an impact to the district could occur. And the definition of each of these are also outlined in the table on page 9 as well. And finally, on page 10, we introduced the concept of plotting the functions onto heat maps based on their impact and likelihood scores. This specific heat map provides a high-level view of the 8 audit universe classifications, and these were based on averages of each of the functions in each of them. Starting on page 18, there are the breakouts of each of those classifications in more detailed heat maps of the entire audit universe. I believe it's under Appendix 1. So this tool was able to clearly highlight critical areas throughout the district that kind of came up throughout our risk assessment. And while our historical approach around the risk assessment would ultimately result in similar results, this new kind of methodology is a lot more efficient, and it also is more aligned with the internal audit standards as well. Before I hand things over to Lauren for the projects in the plan, any questions around the risk assessment?
I guess just overall, if you could flip back to that previous slide where you have the heat map, as you guys compiled this under the new audit universe and actually mapped it out, how did this line up with, I guess, your expectation? And does it make sense your highest and lowest rated, for example? I mean, like onesie twosie things aren't really going to pop in this, but the overall lay of it, how does that line up against what you expected in kind of history?
Yeah, I think it aligned really closely with a lot of what we see in school district, like other school districts, risk assessments. And I personally was, since we had never done anything like this with the heat map, I think we captured a lot of the data numerically in Excel sheets and whatnot. But it was really interesting to see it kind of laid out on a heat map to kind of add a visual aspect to it. But no, I think it was really similar to stuff we've seen in the past with our risk assessments, but it just provided a kind of a different approach to like visually being able to see it all.
And one thing I might add too is that the benefit of this approach is not only for audit purposes, but can be broadened if the organization would like to further pursue ERM. So the thing I always say, and it's not to discredit our work, it's just that the representations that you see here are based on the feedback we were able to gather, the conversations we had. But the flip side of that, the more people that you have involved in the granular detail, the more valuable and robust this does become. So I think there is a lot of opportunity now that Isaac has led this work in mapping in this approach and methodology that we can use this for other purposes. One of the things that comes to mind is as we look at these heat maps, we may see areas that are in the red or the more orange or yellow areas that may be worth noting. It is a higher risk area. However, it's not highly auditable, or it may not need an audit, but it may need some conversation by the board or audit committee to say, are we comfortable with this level of risk? Do we want to accept it, or do we want to put some sort of intervention in place to bring that down? So I think this just helps utilize the risk assessment work, not only for audit planning purposes, but hopefully equips the leadership teams with additional perspectives on risk as a whole.
Another aspect that was a huge improvement is there wasn't always necessarily a clear linkage between our risk assessment results in the past and the projects that we selected, just based on the fact that some of the budget units are, really, substantial compared to the others, and auditing the treasurer's office is, very unlikely we would audit a very specific function or process of it. So having all of the kind of functions outlined in the audit universe is a significant improvement. And rather than trying to piece everything together next year when we come back to this, we'll be able to kind of keep an eye on the audit universe to kind of keep a current and up-to-date list of who owns what and whatnot.
I think real quick, the impact and likelihood, I think it sounds like you said are kind of standard internal audit like classifications. The the functional areas and those 8 big buckets and then all of the areas underneath that, how did those get developed? And I think my question is like, how are you gaining comfort that that is comprehensive? Is that like, because I assume these things are specific to the district as opposed to like you're referencing internal audit standards. Because I think, when you look at like a budget area, like, this is the list and you can check all those off. So like, how do you feel comfortable that you captured everything in these classifications?
Certainly. So there were many things that kind of went into each of these. I will say that we did perform a lot of the analysis that we historically have performed, just to make sure that we were still capturing, all of the financial aspects with our historical approach. But every year we meet with pretty much every senior leadership member to ensure that we're capturing each of these risks. One of the big focuses this year was on the budget constraints and all of that. Everything kind of kept changing throughout, and so we kept having to revisit some of those areas. But then each of us also went through and performed our own kind of assessment on our own, and then we came together to make sure that everything kind of aligned, and so we weren't kind of way out in left field on some of these.
I don't mean to speak for Liz, but I thought what I heard you say wasn't the risk categories, but actually the units, the audit units. So the individual units that make up the 8 characteristics or 8 areas. How do you know that that is complete and accurate? I think is what the question was.
Yes, so I think similarly, when we visited with every member of management, we kind of went through to make sure that we were capturing everything. Each of them was able to provide a lot of feedback around, you should think about adding this. I don't see this. I don't think this falls under us. And so throughout, the future, we'll continue to kind of adapt and adjust all of the functions within the audit universe. But those 8 that we created were more so just to kind of group things together as best as we could.
I'll just echo that I think it's every year that we've done this risk assessment, we keep thinking this is the best yet, and I think it is, but I think that's part of this ongoing multi-year approach, is that I think this is the best we've ever had, but I think next year's will be even more robust as we learn more. But I think the thing that's been really overwhelming for me, and I think the thing that Isaac did so well this year to ground us, was that there isn't a diminishing return on analyzing risk for everything. So what are the most critical areas for us to include? So I think through those conversations, like Isaac said, with leadership, we were able to say, if you had to sum up your areas in these, X fields, can you give us 10? Can you give us the most critical? So I think that's a decision for the future of how granular we'd like to go and kind of that return on the time to analyze at that level. That's a great question. And that's the difference. The budget units are the budget units. That's easy. It's a complete list, but I think this has been very helpful.
Dan, let me share one quick thought also. I think one of the things that will be helpful in seeing this in kind of its, throughout the rest of the year, is in really that idea that we talked about last year, which is understanding what are the risks that are necessarily the organization manages that risk or organization controls that risk versus those things that are outside. Because I think some of the stuff that comes up in the green or in some of the like yellow may be things that we have no actual ability to control. And so therefore we can't really assess if any given action that we do as an organization affects it. Whereas there's other things we have complete control over and that we know completely that we're the reason why it's not running correctly. It's not, or it's not running at its best level. And that's things that we're improving and things that we can focus on and really have the biggest bang for what was the use of time for the internal audit team. Because I think that's the other thing we were kind of grasping at or realizing is that we had a lot of things that, to be truthful, there's just no way for them to come with any real reasonable recommendations if the risk itself is just there is no system in place to do X, right? Or there is nothing that they're consistently doing with Y. Whereas this might be able to give at least a little bit more of that guidance around this area is something that is where we need to focus our attention, focus our time, focus our reviews as a committee to ensure that the internal audit's getting the best image of it. I think that maybe goes a little bit into what will be part of the summary, but that idea of the different types of support the internal audit team will provide, even, you're able to assess the risk in those kind of categories. You may be able to say, okay, well, this group, like, we need you all to get these things in place and we can advise you and help you. But until that's in place, there's nothing that we can truly assess. So that score may actually change as they become more prepared to be audited. They may become more high risk or they may become less of a risk. And so I look forward to seeing what that looks like as it goes on and how maybe those spots on the heat map might change based on what you all are able to kind of assess.
Great. Well, thank you for the feedback on the risk assessment. We'll hop briefly into the content of the audit plan now. So it's important to bridge the first half of the conversation with the projects that are selected. And I think you can see where we're headed. Essentially, we utilize those risk heat maps to say, is this an auditable area? Is it well suited? Have we recently audited? Are there outstanding recommendations that already address these areas? And then really the coupling of the mathematics side of things with the art of it, with saying, is this audit of this area going to provide value and is it properly timed? So essentially what we've come to propose to you is the breakdown of our fiscal 26 plan by project area. I think if I had to succinctly describe the overall approach would be that we are trying to remain agile this year. We are trying to do audits that are not overly burdensome to those groups and departments and schools that are now working with so much less for the first time. I say that, although each year it seems they're doing more with less, but really being cognizant of we don't know exactly what those budget cut impacts will be. So we want to be able to give quick, meaningful feedback via our audits. And then via our planning conversations with our audit committee chairs, there was a great suggestion around this advisory project of helping and assessing the impacts of the budget cuts for the year. Essentially what this looks like is management has done a phenomenal job in quantifying and in both quantitative terms and qualitative terms, stating what areas were reduced and what those impacts may be. So our goal as an audit team is to partner with leadership and go department by department or school by school to say, do you have a new plan? I keep thinking of this budget cut as we used to have these nicely linked chains all throughout our district. And now we've had to remove some of those chains due to these reductions. And so our job hopefully is to come in and help ensure those chains are repaired. And by that, it's either the responsibilities, of course, we won't be making decisions, but more so advising and facilitating. And again, it could be internal controls or process that needs to be adapted and repaired and changed. Also, this becomes a full circle conversation. It informs our risk assessment that we do throughout the year. We can plug that information back into our heat maps. It also says, great, now we've repaired it. Can we give a quick audit through our agile auditing? So you can kind of see how these projects all work together in a way that's very different than our work in the past, which has been predominantly, when we talk about our audits, larger audits that are larger scale, that are very deep and in depth, where this year I think is more of a quantity that is focused on the most important things. So happy to answer any questions. I hope you all had the opportunity to review the descriptions in the plan, but happy to answer any questions you may have about specific projects. And I'll let everyone mull that over. I'll share with you the next slide briefly. So per the audit committee charter, it's actually a requirement that we share with you all our internal audit resources and budget for the year. And I thought this was a notable time to just share that all departments and schools really did face significant changes. An internal audit shared it in those reductions with, unfortunately, the elimination of our internship. And Justin has been a critical component, and we can't say enough about the contributions he's made. So that is certainly a notable reduction in skill and talent. And then we did reduce our non-personnel by 76%, essentially keeping just enough to have the memberships for some free trainings and maintain licensure this year. So, we are part of this organization. We are all in it together. And I think, we all will do more with less this year, because that's what we're here to do, to serve the families and students of Cincinnati Public Schools. So with that being said, before we jump into the dashboard, are there any questions, comments for the fiscal 26 plan?
I don't really have a question, but just a comment. I think overall, appreciate the shared burden. I think that's admirable, that what your team has been able to do. And also, I think with the projects you have listed for 2026, I particularly liked the focus on, I like your explanation of agile auditing, hitting more areas with maybe less burden on the department that you're working with. Also the focus on specifically budget cuts, and maybe how does that really affect individual schools or departments versus the financial impact that it was kind of made at that level decision. And I also like the focus on the student data reporting. It's something that has been top of mind and topical in a lot of these meetings recently. And so I think putting another set of eyes and your team's backing behind it is a great idea. Just a vote of support.
Thank you. And I will add that since you mentioned student data, that is an area we've only peripherally touched via charter school funding, voucher funding. We did a few other smaller projects, but not really in this sense. And I think it's a major undertaking in a major area, but we'll never kind of start to learn about how we can be helpful if we don't start somewhere. So I think it's prime time to do it. So thank you for the support.
Any other comments or questions? Jim?
The heat maps are cool.
I agree. Isaac's done a phenomenal job with this work. It's why I said it was transformational, because it really, to see it this way is awesome. Yeah, very exciting. Well, thank you for the great feedback. And I suppose we would like a vote of approval for the audit committee, or from the audit committee, for the plan, but also for my goals. So I just say this now so I don't forget. Maybe we could do both at the conclusion of my goals.
Okay.
Great. So with our dashboard, I'll be brief. I know we're kind of closing in on our estimated time here. But the audit committee dashboard has been updated to reflect all of the projects within our fiscal 26 plan. Nothing like updating it and all that green turning red again, but I guess that's part of the cycle. So we're at it again, hopefully turning things green. It really doesn't mean a whole lot right now. We kind of just have placeholders in a lot of projects, except our planning and risk assessment section is fully complete. Included that for the first time just to see the vast amount of tasks that went into that work this year. But I think the other notable item was around the past recommendations the past recommendations for escalation report. I did add a later note at the top to request your review. So my apologies, that was just added yesterday. However, Isaac is going to talk a little further about that and provide some context. But yeah, thank you all for your preparation and reading the audit plan. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Isaac to talk through our past recommendations.
So thank you. So all of the new recommendations that were reported and communicated at the last meeting have been added to the tracking process, as well as all of the visuals here at the bottom of the dashboard. I will note that 5 recommendations have been completed since the April Audit Committee meeting, despite almost all of the district leadership being busy with putting together the budget that they finally passed. And like Lauren had mentioned, the second item that we asked you to review is the escalation plan visual, a little bit farther down. There were a few, if you could click that link, please. If you click on the dashboard, yeah, that visual. There were a few recommendations that have been added to the 60 to 120 days past due since the April meeting. And per the escalation plan, it's up to you all if you'd like anyone to come and present further information around those recommendations. I believe Julia is attending today to talk about the benefits, ones that were requested at the last meeting.
She's been, okay.
So if you scroll down a bit, lines 9 through 13 kind of capture the ones that could be considered. Believe each of those may be kind of fall under the treasurer's office. So if you'd like them to come and present more detail around those, please let us know. But lastly, document 4D in the Google folder is a summary of all of the completed recommendations throughout this fiscal year. There were a total of 39 recommendations. And we wanted to recognize all of the hard work and prioritization that went into completing those. And huge kudos and congrats to management for accomplishing that. So I believe that's all of the past recommendation stuff.
Lauren, were any of those jumping out to you all as items that you would recommend that we ask management to come in to talk about?
I don't
I can't read
believe
that from
so. I don't believe so. Most of them relate to district-wide initiatives. And so with that kind of being a bigger undertaking, I think it's harder to estimate when that'll be accomplished. And so I wouldn't necessarily say that those are warranted. I think those were the only ones that's kind of district-wide.
Okay, so since we can't conduct business outside of the public meeting setting, I would just ask that if anybody from the audit committee reviews any of this after this meeting and has any opinions about the next meeting and content, they can certainly reach out to me directly or to Clarice or to Lauren as we begin to plan our agenda for the October meeting. I think that's allowable under sunshine rules. Is that correct? Okay. Just don't send a email to everybody. So we could factor that into the next meeting if we feel like that's something that we feel like feel passionately about. Okay. Any other comments before Lauren gets into her goals for the year? Yes, Steve.
Sorry to be so slow on this, but following up what Jim said about the heat maps. Number 5 and number 1, I think, are fascinating. Do well for board members to look at number 1 and see the lack of impact the governance of the district actually has, and that the real work of the district goes on without any of that crap that we usually can dish up on a monthly basis. But then also how wonderful 5 is, where the impact of the teaching and learning and extracurriculars are so high. I'm enjoying the pictures.
Okay, Lauren, if you want to keep us moving.
All right, so very briefly, it's the time of the year again. I think I'm actually a little ahead of technical schedule, but since we're meeting in July, we'll go ahead and get this done since we don't want to wait until October. So my goals for the 25-26 year are outlined up on the document that you see on the screen. They tend to follow a very similar categorical structure. However, every year is I think, how can I rephrase these goals? I think the reality is that the work changes within this plan. And so each year it really is this new rendition of how are we going to change our risk assessment approach, which I believe we have really rethought, as well as our internal audit plan itself. So I think the final focus that I really want to take to the next level this year, though, is the further development of internal audit department, which I think really correlates with the goals that were shared from the audit committee side as well. I think we had a wonderful opportunity to be included and invited to so many other presentations, Just Ask Jen's board presentations, and perhaps there's opportunities to take that even further this year. So I definitely open and welcome all points of encouragement, guidance around the goals, because I really do think we adapt and grow each year, but some additional pointed feedback is certainly welcome and appreciated.
The only comment I would say is, I think you guys did a really good job on the risk assessment. That follows what I've traditionally seen in other organizations that are for profit. So that's normal process. Your goal one, I wouldn't say is to redevelop that. I would phrase it more as it continue to enhance, because you have a good base. I don't think redevelopment every year is a good thing. Enhancing that, tweaking that, making it better is really where you want, because you heard the board members, like the heat map, it shows that visual thing, but that's all driven by the assessment that you guys developed, and knowing that it's in conformance with the IIA standards and things like that helps that solidify that the methodology is solid. And just tweaking, hey, in this one, do we consider this high, low? As you tweak and get better understanding of those units is where I think that's what that really, because I don't think you need to redevelop it based on what I see.
Thank you.
I would share I thought your goals are really good. I think the one thing maybe I might add in that idea of developing your team is also to develop your processes for your team to develop. So I think that's the other part to it, right? Is making sure your team has their consistency so that they can kind of focus on other things is part of the developing of the team. And so I know that's something you've talked about before, about wanting to ensure that you all had your own internal processes. So as you went out to others, you had a kind of consistent rhythm and rhyme to it. So
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. I think having the IA manual and IA standards on the plan for the first time last year, this year, I think we're really ready to hit the ground running. And I think further emphasizing that in this goal, I think is a really, really great call out. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Beginning of the meeting, we talked about the value internal audit. I think that maybe the impact and have it be very specific could be part of goal number 2.
Lauren, do you want to update these and have them voted on the next meeting, or do you want to?
I can further refine them.
That's a friendly amendment. We could approve that today if you want to just pencil it in, or
Okay.
Yeah, I can just strengthen the call outs within this document if you are comfortable, and then we can put it in. I'll bring the final version, but if you're all comfortable with these amendments, we can approve them formally.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
All right.
great. That allows us to proceed
Okay.
procedurally, so.
So, can I ask for a motion to approve the internal audit plan and for the chief audit executive goals? Clarice motioned. Can I have a second?
I second.
Okay, Lauren, I guess we should do a roll call vote.
Yes,
on-
please.
Okay.
Dan Holdhouse,
Yes.
Clarice Warren,
Yes.
Rick Jeanette, Addie Carson,
Yes.
Laura De Oliveira,
Yes.
Liz Guttridge,
Yes.
Seth Harmon,
Yes.
Kevin Hoffman,
Yes.
Paul Kitzmiller,
Yes.
Carol Mitchell Lawrence,
Yes.
Jonathan Young,
Yes.
Eve Bolton,
Aye.
Brandon Craig,
Yes.
Jim Crossett.
Yes.
Thank you all. We sincerely appreciate your feedback and support.
Excellent. Okay, so I had only one other bit of other business, seeing as it's Jen's final audit committee meeting. I wanted to just say congratulations on behalf of the audit committee on your retirement and thank you for everything that you've done. And I know Mike will do a great job, but you will certainly be missed as part of the district and here in this meeting and in this room. So thank you.
You know, this is my first final goodbye. I call it my farewell tour. You know, I just wanted to formally thank the audit committee for always supporting and encouraging and just being there as my Verizon network. Don't think that your role is just to show up here every couple months and sit and listen. There have been times when I've been on that limb all by myself and reached out to a few of you for guidance and support. So I really thank you. You have a huge impact on this district and the support of Lauren and her team and Mike and his team. And Mike and I have worked together for more than 10 years. He actually is finishing my sentences for me now. And so we think a lot alike. And so I leave the district in really good hands. And I'm so grateful to be and honored to have served the role as treasurer and chief financial officer for 10 years. And the other 20 years doing other stuff. So thank you. I appreciate the comments.
Okay, so our final bit of business for the evening is we do have some executive session topics to cover. So I would like to ask for a motion to go into executive. I'm getting very good at this, I think. I would ask for a motion for executive session to discuss personnel matters and pending litigation.
I motion. I'm not as good as you, Dave.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
All right, that was John. Okay, so Lauren, could you do a roll call vote?
Absolutely. Dan Holthouse,
Yes.
Clarice Warner,
Yes.
Rick Jeanette, Addie Carson,
Yes.
Laura De Oliveira,
Yes.
Liz Guttridge,
Yes.
Seth Harmon, Kevin Hoffman,
Yes.
Paul Kitzmiller,
Yes.
Carol Mitchell Lawrence,
Yes.
Jonathan Young,
Yes.
Eve Bolton,
Yes.
Brandon Craig,
Yes.
Jim Crossett.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Okay, so we're going to enter executive session. We will adjourn out of executive session, so the meeting will conclude at that point. And just as a reminder, before we go out of public, that the executive session is private discussion that shouldn't leave the room. So I just want to make sure we're